They never had to say it out loud. No one needed to look you in the eyes and whisper, "Don't trust yourself." Because the world trained you to doubt yourself in much subtler, crueler ways. It started early. You were told to sit still when your body wanted to move, told to smile when you felt like crying, told to say, "I'm fine," even when your world was falling apart. And every time you obeyed something in, you cracked. Your intuition silenced, your voice filtered, your truth rewritten to please others. You began to second-guess every instinct. Should I speak up? Should I leave? Am I overreacting or just broken? Let me ask you something. When was the last time you fully trusted your gut and didn't apologize for it? You see, this wasn't accidental. This self-doubt wasn't born in you. It was carefully installed by systems, by culture, by people who feared the power of someone who truly knows themselves. And that's why today, you flinch before making choices. You seek permission. You wait for validation. You doubt your own damn feelings. But what if I told you none of this is your fault? That what you call insecurity might actually be a symptom of psychological conditioning. Because once you understand how they trained you to doubt yourself, you'll finally know how to untrain it. Stay with me, because what we're about to uncover might just change how you see your entire life story. You didn't wake up one day and decide to doubt yourself. That voice inside your head, the one that questions your worth, your choices, your instincts, it was planted long before you had the words to defend yourself. It began in the quiet corners of your childhood, where obedience was mistaken for goodness and silence was rewarded more than self-expression. You were taught to be nice, not honest, to be agreeable, not authentic. You were told what to wear, what to believe, what to fear. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, you learned not to trust your own eyes. Your emotions became problems to manage, not signals to understand. Your imagination, once wild and unfiltered, was labeled a distraction. Your anger was called disrespect. Your sadness, attention-seeking. And so, you learned to shrink, to censor, to question everything about yourself while blindly accepting everything around you. This is how doubt is taught, not through punishment, but through performance. Through praise when you conform. Through disapproval when you resist. And the most dangerous part, you thought it was love. You thought their rules were protection. But what they were really protecting was control. Carl Jung once said that the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent. What if your self-doubt isn't yours at all, but inherited, passed down like an heirloom, nurtured by those too afraid to live honestly themselves? You didn't choose to silence your intuition. You were trained to. Every time you were rewarded for suppressing your feelings, every time you were corrected for thinking differently, every time you were told, "That's just in your head," you were being groomed to abandon yourself. And now, that training is so deep, you police yourself before anyone else has the chance. You anticipate rejection before it comes. You shrink yourself to fit into spaces you were never meant to belong to. Not because you're weak, but because you were conditioned to believe that strength looks like silence. If you're still here, it means part of you is done performing. Part of you wants to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. So if this is hitting something real inside, you follow this channel, because we're just getting started. And what's coming next is going to cut deeper than you expect. You try to move on, to function, to smile at your coworkers, to answer emails, to be productive. But underneath it all, something aches. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's just constant. A quiet exhaustion that no amount of rest seems to fix. You second-guess everything from what you said in that meeting to why your friend hasn't replied to your text. You replay conversations in your head. You edit your thoughts before speaking. You walk on eggshells in rooms where no one even asked you to. And worst of all, you punish yourself for it. You tell yourself to toughen up, to stop being so sensitive, to get over it already. But what if you're not overreacting? What if the world really did teach you to fear your own mind? Here's the rupture. Most people don't see coming. That gnawing self-doubt you carry, it's not a personal flaw. It's a side effect of emotional neglect. When no one mirrors your inner world, you start to believe it doesn't matter. When you're constantly told to look happy, be polite, keep it together, you don't just suppress your feelings. You start to distrust them. You lose your internal compass. And then one day, you realize you can't tell the difference between your voice and theirs. You become the expert at making yourself the problem. You blame your anxiety on overthinking. You blame your sadness on being too emotional. You blame your indecision on not being strong enough. But the truth is, you were never taught how to feel safe inside yourself. That's not your fault. That's a wound, and it shows up everywhere. In the way you apologize before speaking. In the way you always think someone's mad at you. In the way you struggle to say no without guilt. You wear masks so well, you've forgotten what your real face looks like. And deep down, you're terrified that if you take that mask off, no one will stay. But here's the most painful part. You stayed for them. You fought for them. You gave everything to people who couldn't even see you. And in the process, you became invisible to yourself. So ask yourself this. What happens when you finally stop performing and start remembering who you were before the world trained you to disappear? They don't always scream it at you. Sometimes they whisper it in compliments. You're so mature for your age. You're the strong one. You're always so composed. And you smile. You nod. Because you think it's praise. But deep down, your body knows the truth. That what they're really saying is, thank you for not needing too much. Thank you for not being a burden. Thank you for sacrificing your needs to make the rest of us more comfortable. This is how emotional manipulation hides in plain sight. It rewards your silence. It praises your compliance. And every time you're told you're so understanding while someone dumps their chaos on you without ever asking how you're doing, you lose one more piece of yourself. Because here's the brutal truth. They didn't want your strength. They wanted your self-abandonment. Carl Jung warned us that the less we embody our shadow, the denied, hidden emotional part of the self, the blacker and denser it becomes. And so, your shadow grows. Not because you're broken, but because you've been told your pain is inconvenient, that your anger is too intense, that your boundaries are too much. But what if your anger is sacred? What if your discomfort is the body's last attempt to save you from a life of performance? You've spent years making excuses for people who invalidate you. Years thinking maybe I'm just overthinking. Years saying they didn't mean it like that. But listen closely. If someone repeatedly makes you feel small, then teaches you to call it love, that's not affection. That's programming. And here's what no one tells you. The longer you stay in environments that reward your emotional silence, the more disconnected you become from your own reality. You start asking for permission to feel. You wait for external proof to validate what your gut already knows. You gaslight yourself before they even have the chance. And eventually the voice in your head that once said, "This doesn't feel right," gets drowned out by a louder voice that says, "Don't be dramatic." But ask yourself this. At some point, you stopped needing someone else to tear you down. You took over the job yourself. You became your own critic, your own censor, your own jailer. That voice in your head, the one that says, "You're not ready, you're too much, you'll mess this up, it sounds like you." But it's not. It's a recording, a loop, a voice you internalized so early and so often, you started calling it self-awareness. Carl Jung called this process introjection, the unconscious adoption of the beliefs, judgments, and emotional habits of others. You didn't choose that inner critic. It was chosen for you by a parent who feared your individuality, by a teacher who punished your questions, by a culture that thrives when you stay small. And now, it lives inside you, correcting you before you act, shaming you before you speak, undermining you before you even begin. You think it's your intuition, but it's not. Intuition speaks in clarity. This voice speaks in fear. You think it's your conscience, but it's not. Conscience guides you toward alignment. This voice drags you back into submission. And the most tragic part, you trust it more than you trust yourself. You believe it has your best interest in mind because it's always been there. So you second-guess your dreams. You play small in relationships. You sabotage your own potential. Not because you're broken, but because that's how you were taught to stay safe. But here's what they never taught you. Safety doesn't come from avoiding your power. It comes from reclaiming it. Every time you bite your tongue, every time you hold back your truth, every time you talk yourself out of what you know is right, you're not being mature. You're being managed, and maybe that inner voice isn't wisdom. Maybe it's just an echo, a memory of a system that never wanted you to belong to yourself. So the question is, if that voice isn't really yours, then who would you be without it? You would be dangerous, not in the way they warned you about, not reckless, not cruel, but dangerous in the way a person becomes when they finally stop apologizing for existing. When they stop asking, "Is this okay?" and start saying, "This is who I am." Carl Jung believed that the ultimate purpose of life wasn't to become good by society's standards, but to become whole. He called it individuation, the process of integrating your shadow, reclaiming your truth, and stepping into your unalterable self. This isn't about self-improvement. It's about self-return. It's not about fixing what's broken. It's about remembering what was buried. You were not born full of doubt. You were born with instinct, with clarity, with fire. But then you were taught to trade that fire for approval. And now you light everyone else's torch while yours burns out in silence. Individuation is the journey back to your fire. It's the moment you hear that inner critic and respond, "That's not my voice." It's when you feel fear and still move forward. It's when you finally choose truth over performance, even if it means standing alone. And yes, it's messy. Yes, it's terrifying. Because reclaiming your power means you can no longer blame them. You can no longer stay in the comfort of being shaped. You must shape yourself. But here's the gift. Once you trust your voice again, once you stop waiting for permission, once you see yourself clearly, no one can train you to doubt it ever again. This is the turning point. Not the end, but the beginning. of your uncensored life, of your untrained mind, of your uncontaminated truth. So, if this spoke to something buried inside you, don't let it end here. Start small. Write the thought you've been afraid to write. Speak the truth you've been swallowing for years. Choose one moment today to trust yourself completely. And when the voice of doubt returns, and it will, don't fight it, just whisper, I see you, but I'm not yours anymore. Now breathe. You're finally home.